An actress who appeared on The Bill Cosby Show is suing the comedian for allegedly drugging and sexually assaulting her decades ago.
The chilling revelation not only rekindles one individual's painful memories, but also reignites suspicions that have haunted Hollywood's backstage for decades. The Cosby Show was once the pride of American television in the 1980s and 1990s, hailed as the golden symbol of a successful black family. Bill Cosby was revered to the point of being crowned America's dad, a model of the kind, devoted father and ideal husband in the eyes of millions of viewers. But that glory was merely a mask. When the victims began to break their silence, the Cosby Show empire trembled and collapsed in disgrace. After 40 years, the very stars who once stood by the show have spoken up, revealing things they kept silent about for far too long, from mentoring sessions that turned into traps to threats that suffocated careers. Each account paints a sickening portrait of power gone wrong. This is not just the tragedy of one man, but an indictment of an entire industry that enabled and concealed abuse. How many more dark corners remain hidden? Hit follow now, because the truth behind this perfect family will surely send chills down your spine. The Cosby Show, the glory of a television icon. In the 1980s, American television witnessed a rare phenomenon. A seemingly simple show about everyday family life became a sensation, not only dominating the ratings charts, but also changing how an entire community was perceived. The Cosby Show premiered on September 20, 1984, and was immediately seen as a breath of fresh air. From its very first episode, it drew in tens of millions of viewers, ushering in an era where the show would dominate American television for nearly a decade. At a time when Hollywood was still steeped in prejudice, when the image of black people on screen was often tied to poverty, violence, or exaggerated comedy, The Cosby Show emerged as a revolution. Audiences saw an upper-middle-class black family living in a sophisticated brownstone in Brooklyn, where the father was an obstetrician, the mother a lawyer, and the 5 children were smart, witty, and loving toward one another. That portrayal may have seemed simple, but was in fact daring. At the time, most American TV shows avoided depicting successful black families. It was a bitter truth. Producers believed that audiences wouldn't accept African Americans in intellectual, well-educated, and prosperous roles. Bill Cosby, already a popular stand-up comedian known for his relatable humor, completely changed that narrative. He infused the script with his own experiences and ideals of family life, creating the character Dr. Heathcliff Cliff Huxtable, a witty, insightful, stern, yet loving father. Beside him was Claire Huxtable, an intelligent, independent, and strong-willed attorney played by Felicia Rashad, a mother and wife, who was ideal yet never overshadowed by her husband. Within its first season, The Cosby Show became a phenomenon. Each episode averaged over 30 million viewers weekly. From 1985 to 1990, it consistently topped the Nielsen ratings, becoming the most-watched television program in America for 5 consecutive years, a feat previously achieved by only one other legendary sitcom, All in the Family. By the time it concluded after 8 seasons on April 30, 1992, The Cosby Show had produced a total of 201 episodes, an impressive number for any sitcom. Beyond ratings, the show earned numerous prestigious awards. The Cosby Show received 29 Emmy nominations and won 6, along with 3 Golden Globe Awards, including Best Television Series, Comedy or Musical. Bill Cosby himself won the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Television Series twice, 1985-1986. Other cast members were frequently nominated as well, affirming the show's artistic weight. For nearly a decade, The Cosby Show wasn't just a TV program. It was a benchmark, a point of pride for NBC, and more importantly, a cultural icon for African Americans. One of the key factors behind The Cosby Show's popularity was its seamless blend of everyday humor with deep, meaningful lessons. Audiences laughed at the witty banter between Cliff and his children, but would grow silent when the show skillfully addressed serious topics like education, gender, family responsibility, and societal prejudice. It was a form of educational entertainment that Bill Cosby was committed to building. He aimed to present viewers with positive role models, an ideal family that people could aspire to emulate. The show's success wasn't limited to the United States. The Cosby Show became an international phenomenon, airing in countries where it was rare to see black actors in lead roles. Its global popularity proved that themes of family love and determination are universal values that transcend racial or cultural boundaries. That's why for many years the Huxtable family became a worldwide symbol of warmth and achievement. Behind the scenes, The Cosby Show also served as a launchpad for many young actors. Lisa Bonet, who played Denise Huxtable, became a teenage icon with her free-spirited, unique style. Malcolm Jamal Warner left a strong impression as Theo Huxtable, the son who often clashed with his father using naive yet charming arguments. Keshia Knight Pulliam became one of the youngest actors ever nominated for an Emmy at just 6 years old, thanks to her role as Rudy Huxtable. This youthful cast was adored by audiences and helped create one of the most memorable television families in history. And at the heart of it all was Bill Cosby, the leader, both on and off screen. With his witty, humorous style, he turned Cliff Huxtable into the ideal father figure, intelligent, funny, responsible, yet always approachable. The media dubbed him America's Dad. This title wasn't just for the character on screen, it reflected how the public viewed Cosby in real life. It was a rare moment when a black celebrity could become a national icon beloved by audiences of all ages, across both black and white communities. But even amid that dazzling glory, the first cracks had begun to appear. Behind the studio lights and glamour, there were whispers that no one dared say aloud. While viewers were still enchanted by the sweet laughter of the Huxtable family, some crew members felt the heavy atmosphere, unspoken rules, and suffocating control from none other than America's Dad. In the late 1980s, Lisa Bonet, the most promising young star, was suddenly removed from the spin-off A Different World. Officially, the reason given was creative differences, but behind the scenes, rumors swirled of intense conflicts with Bill Cosby, ranging from her bold role in Angel Heart to her relationship with Lenny Kravitz. At the time, these details went largely unnoticed by the public. All people saw was the surface. The Cosby Show continuing to air regularly, pulling in tens of millions of viewers, winning awards, and elevating Bill Cosby as a celebrated figure. But that mask would one day fall. Because when a show reaches the height of glory, any darkness hiding behind it becomes all the more terrifying. The Bill Cosby scandal, when an icon crumbles. From being America's Dad, beloved by millions of viewers, Bill Cosby was once the embodiment of an ideal father, a respected mentor, and a cultural icon. However, what happened behind the stage lights told a completely different story. When the victims began to break their silence, that carefully crafted image quickly collapsed, revealing a series of shocking accounts the public had never imagined. The wave of accusations surged in the mid-2010s, but in truth, the whispers had existed for many years prior. Several women claimed they were taken advantage of during what seemed to be career mentoring sessions. The allegations shared a disturbing pattern: a private meeting, a drink offered, followed by dizziness, and then a loss of control. Many witnesses alleged that Cosby used his powerful status in the entertainment industry to suppress and even threaten the careers of anyone who dared to speak out. The turning point that shook America came in 2014 when comedian Hannibal Buress unexpectedly called Cosby a rapist during a live performance. The video spread like wildfire, reigniting long-buried rumors. Soon after, dozens of women, from models and actresses to industry workers, began to publicly recount their experiences. According to CNN, the number surpassed 50, making it one of the most massive scandals in Hollywood history. Andrea Constand, a former employee at Temple University, was the first to take legal action. She accused Cosby of giving her an anti-anxiety pill in 2004 that left her incapacitated before he took advantage of her. After years of investigation in 2018, Cosby was found guilty on 3 felony charges and sentenced to a prison term of 3 to 10 years. For a star once celebrated as a moral compass, the conviction struck like a thunderbolt through the American entertainment industry. However, in 2021, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court unexpectedly overturned the conviction, citing procedural errors tied to a prior legal agreement. Cosby walked free from prison, leaving the public in disbelief. But that couldn't undo the damage to his reputation. Television networks quickly pulled The Cosby Show from their lineups, and numerous honorary titles and awards previously bestowed upon him were rescinded. What enraged the public most was the bitter contradiction on screen. He was Dr. Huxtable, the gentle, devoted, exemplary father. In reality, he was surrounded by a storm of allegations involving exploitation and abuse. This stark contrast turned Cosby's scandal into one of the most explosive events of the cyber Me Too era, shaking public trust in a figure they had once revered. This downfall was not just the personal collapse of a comedian. It raised serious questions about an industry that had protected, remained silent, and enabled power for decades. And even more painfully, those who once stood beside him on the set of The Cosby Show The cast, once known as the Huxtable family, have become the very witnesses now exposing that harrowing truth. The silence and initial reactions of the Cosby Show cast. When the first accusations against Bill Cosby began flooding the media, the public exploded in outrage like a bomb had gone off. But amid the storm, all eyes turned to the familiar faces who had shared the screen with him, the cast of The Cosby Show. These were the people closest to him, once considered Cosby's second family. So how did they respond? At first, most chose silence. Lisa Bonet, the spirited Denise Huxtable, had long kept her distance from Cosby. Yet she didn't immediately dive into the media firestorm. Only later in an interview did she admit that for many years she had always sensed a dark energy surrounding him. Her words were gentle, but they made it clear to the public that the revelations came as no surprise to her. In contrast, Phylicia Rashad, who played matriarch Claire Huxtable, publicly defended Cosby. She claimed the media had convicted him before the courts and insisted she still believed in the character of the man she had worked with for so many years. This stance sparked intense backlash, forcing her to later clarify that she did not intend to offend the accusers. But the damage was done. Public opinion had already turned, and Rashad's image suffered an inevitable fracture. Malcolm Jamal Warner, who portrayed Theo Huxtable, responded with more caution. He did not deny his disappointment, but he also refrained from engaging in public battles. Warner emphasized that The Cosby Show's artistic legacy could not be erased, though the accusations against Cosby had cast a bitter shadow over once beautiful memories. Meanwhile, other cast members like Tempest Bledsoe Vanessa and Keshia Knight Pulliam Rudy remained reserved. Pulliam had once called Cosby a second father, but under public pressure she simply expressed heartbreak and stated her faith in justice. Her stance reflected both respect for a former mentor and a deliberate distance from an overwhelming scandal. The cast's silence, partly supportive, partly hesitant, revealed a harsh reality: they were caught between sweet memories and the dark weight of truth. Personal bonds intertwined careers, and the fear of public backlash made it hard for them to speak out right away. But over time, one by one, they began to reveal more, and only then did the full picture behind The Cosby Show's polished image begin to emerge. The horrifying truth unveiled. After 40 years, as the public gradually grew accustomed to the image of a fallen Bill Cosby, fragments of truth began to surface, this time from the very people who had stood beside him on the set of The Cosby Show. These were no longer stories from tabloids or anonymous witnesses, but confessions from the same faces who once called him Dad on national television. The silence that had lasted for decades finally shattered, and the pieces offered by the cast members painted an entirely different picture: an oppressive backstage environment, ruthless control, and behavior beyond imagination. These revelations not only exposed a Bill Cosby with a terrifying dark side, but also highlighted how an entire crew and even an entire industry had made compromises with power, choosing silence over truth to preserve a false idol. And as the sweet memories of The Cosby Show were dragged back into the harsh light of reality, audiences came to realize that this was not just the downfall of one man, it was a betrayal of collective trust. The first shot was fired by Joseph C. Phillips. Joseph C. Phillips declares Cosby is guilty. Among the actors who once worked on The Cosby Show, Joseph C. Phillips, the man who portrayed Martin Kendall, husband of Denise Huxtable, was one of the first to dare break the wall of silence. His character on screen was the embodiment of an intellectual, composed, and loving family man. But it was Phillips himself, with unflinching honesty and courage, who made a declaration that shocked the American public. Of course, Bill Cosby is guilty. This statement came in 2015, during the height of the public outcry sparked by the wave of allegations against Cosby. While many former cast members stayed silent or avoided direct comment, Phillips chose to face the issue head-on. He didn't use vague language, didn't try to keep the peace. He stated clearly and unequivocally that everything the public was hearing about Cosby was entirely believable. Phillips recalled that during his years on the show, the cast would sometimes whisper among themselves about the persistent rumors surrounding Cosby. Though no one ever confirmed anything openly, there was always a lingering sense of unease on set. He wrote, "You don't have to see it with your own eyes, or hear it with your own ears to know it's real. It's there in the way people avoid topics in half-spoken words, in the silence that stretches too long." His declaration didn't just shock the public, it unsettled many of his former colleagues. Because when a cast member from The Cosby Show boldly declared Cosby is guilty, The carefully constructed illusion of a perfect family show was ripped apart. This was no longer rumors from outsiders, but confirmation from someone inside the house. Phillips also described the bitter realization that he had once been part of a fake perfect family on screen, while behind the scenes lurked a horrifying truth. He believed Cosby had masterfully used his reputation, career, and status as America's dad to make it difficult for anyone to believe otherwise. And because of that reverence, many chose silence over defending the victims. What made Phillips's statement more significant than ever was the shift it triggered in how the public perceived the scandal. When a fellow cast member, someone who had worked closely with Cosby and witnessed his off-camera persona, declared Cosby as guilty, the truth was no longer a collection of isolated voices. It became an alarm bell, forcing society to confront the question, how could someone so powerful hide behind a moral mask for so many decades? After publishing the essay, Phillips faced intense backlash. Some longtime Cosby Show fans lashed out, accusing him of betraying the man who once helped his career. But above all, that declaration etched Joseph C. Phillips's name into the history of the Cosby scandal as one of the first to stand up and say what so many were still too afraid to admit. With one brief yet piercing statement, "Cosby is guilty," Joseph C. Phillips didn't just condemn an individual. He challenged an entire entertainment industry long accustomed to shielding those in power. His words became the first piece of a larger puzzle, paving the way for a series of harrowing revelations from other Cosby Show cast members in the years that followed. Lisa Bonet hints at Cosby's evil energy. If Joseph C. Phillips's statement was a knife slicing directly through Cosby's polished facade, then Lisa Bonet's subtle insinuations were more like a needle piercing quietly and deeply into the conscience of those listening. Unlike Phillips, Bonet didn't shout the words guilty, but the language she chose sent shivers through Hollywood. In a rare 2018 interview, the actress who played the free-spirited, strong-willed Denise Huxtable, the Huxtable family's unconventional daughter, shared openly, "I don't know the details, but I always sensed a dark energy surrounding him, and that kind of energy is impossible to hide." With just a few words, Bonet shattered the ambiguity that many still clung to. Because if someone so close to Cosby on set had always felt the darkness, then clearly that sense of unease couldn't have been coincidence. She didn't need to recount specific acts nor offer elaborate proof. Her simple depiction, evil energy, was enough to evoke a chilling sensation, the kind one usually only associates with fiction, but which it turns out had existed behind the scenes of one of America's most beloved family shows. What made Lisa Bonet's words all the more powerful was the long-standing tension between her and Bill Cosby, stretching back decades. Even during The Cosby Show, she had often been at odds with him, whether over her controversial role in Angel Heart, which featured an explicit scene, or a semi-nude photo shoot she did for Interview magazine. Cosby reportedly pushed back hard, wanting Lisa to remain the good daughter in the public eye, while he himself was allegedly committing acts far darker behind closed doors. This contradiction only deepened the weight of Bonet's suggestion she had seen it, felt it, and stayed silent long enough. Unlike Phylicia Rashad, who publicly defended Cosby, Bonet stood by her personal truth, painful though it may have been. When asked if she had more to say on the matter, her answer was firm: "If there was something more I needed to reveal, I would have said it long ago. That's who I am. I leave it to justice and karma." The calm finality of her words struck a nerve, suggesting that what she already knew was horrifying enough that no further explanation was necessary. The irony lies in the character of Denise Huxtable herself, a fan favorite known for her independence, outspokenness, and refusal to conform. In real life, Bonet embodied that same spirit, and the cost was steep. She was pushed out of the center of the television universe that Cosby controlled. And now, decades later, her chilling hint has become a critical puzzle piece in the larger story of Bill Cosby's abuse of power and moral decay. If Phillips revealed the truth with logic, Bonet amplified it with instinct. Together, they forced the public to confront a terrifying idea that behind America's dad lurked a darkness no one had wanted to acknowledge. And this was only the beginning of the haunting testimonies still to come from the Cosby Show cast. Lily Bernard, a cast member and survivor, breaks her silence. No longer hinting or implying, Lily Bernard, a former actress on The Cosby Show, stood before the public and called Bill Cosby by name as the man who destroyed her life. According to a civil lawsuit filed by Bernard in 2021, the horrifying experience began when Cosby took her under his wing as a mentor. With his legendary status and the nickname America's Dad, he earned the trust of a young, ambitious actress. But instead of a professional opportunity, what Bernard received was a nightmare. She recounted that during one meeting, Cosby drugged her until she lost consciousness. When she awoke, she found herself immobilized Cosby on top of her. Bernard revealed even more chilling details. Cosby threatened to destroy her career, and even her life if she ever spoke out. Driven by fear, she remained silent for decades, living in pain, humiliation, and shame. It wasn't until the rise of the Me Too movement that Bernard found the strength to speak up. In court, she declared, "I have lived in fear and pain and in shame since that day." Bernard's account not only exposed Cosby, but also raised a searing question. How could a man so celebrated, so venerated in Hollywood, hide such monstrous behavior for so long right on a studio set? Why were victims like Bernard forced into lonely silence, while dozens of co-workers sensed something was wrong? Even more significant, Bernard's lawsuit didn't just target Cosby. She also named the production companies and television networks involved, accusing them of turning a blind eye or worse, enabling him. NBC Universal Kaufman Astoria Studios and the Carsey Werner Company were explicitly cited for granting Cosby unchecked power with no oversight, allowing him to abuse his prestige and fame in vile and horrific ways. This was no longer a story about a single man, but an indictment of an entire system that protected power to preserve profit. Lily Bernard's emergence as a vocal accuser transformed the Cosby scandal from a string of isolated allegations into a coherent, undeniable narrative. This wasn't a stranger from outside the industry. It was a member of The Cosby Show, cast from the very world where Cosby had once been idolized as America's dad. That stark contrast only deepened the public's outrage, while audiences believed in the image of a warm, loving father on screen behind the scenes. A young actress had become a real-life victim. With Bernard's testimony, the wall of silence that had endured for 40 years finally crumbled. No more baseless rumors. No more vague suspicions. Here was living evidence, a direct voice from someone who lost her career and her youth under the shadow of a so-called legend. And from the moment Bernard spoke out, no one could continue pretending they didn't know. The anger and disillusionment of the other cast members. As the accusations against Bill Cosby continued to unfold, reactions from the Cosby Show cast were no longer limited to a few prominent voices like Lisa Bonet, Joseph C. Phillips, or Lily Bernard. Many others actors who once saw the show as a second family could no longer contain their outrage and heartbreak. They had once regarded Cosby as a TV father, a guiding light. Decades later, that image crumbled before their eyes, taking with it careers, pride, and cherished memories of youth. Malcolm Jamal Warner, who played Theo Huxtable, openly expressed this inner turmoil. In multiple interviews, he acknowledged his gratitude for The Cosby Show, which had launched his career. But once the scandal broke, Warner admitted that the pride he once felt had turned into a burden of shame. He spoke bitterly about how the legacy of the show, a once celebrated symbol of American culture, had now been tainted by one man. While he sympathized with the victims, he also confessed to feeling betrayed himself. "We spent our youth building a beautiful image of an African-American family, and it all vanished because of what he did." Tempest Bledsoe, who portrayed Vanessa Huxtable, also couldn't hide her disappointment. She had always viewed Cosby as a mentor, someone who guided her through Hollywood from a young age. But when the truth emerged, Bledsoe admitted she was left shocked and confused, unable to reconcile how the man who once taught her discipline and responsibility could lead such a double life. In one interview, she exclaimed, "The pain isn't just that those women were hurt, it's also that we were all deceived." All those moral lessons he preached turned out to be just a facade. Jasmine Guy, who had previously spoken out about how Lisa Bonet was mistreated on the set of A Different World, often voiced her frustration with the entire production system. She believed that not only Cosby but the crew and even the networks had turned a blind eye to obvious warning signs. That silence, she argued, is what allowed Cosby to maintain such unchecked power for so long. For Jasmine, this wasn't just about one man's wrongdoing. It was a damning reflection of Hollywood's willingness to protect reputation and profits at the expense of safety. Keshia Knight Pulliam, once the beloved little Rudy America's youngest TV daughter, wasn't immune to the shock either. Though she initially stayed quiet as the allegations piled up, Pulliam eventually confessed that her childhood memories now bore an irreparable crack. In an emotional interview, she admitted that while she remained grateful to Cosby for the kindness he once showed her on set, that didn't erase the pain others had suffered. She called it a double wound, grieving both the loss of the Huxtable family ideal and the devastating truth behind it. Raven-Symoné, who played Olivia Kendall, the adorable stepdaughter of Denise, responded differently. A former child star who later found fame through Disney Raven was clear that she didn't want her childhood to be permanently tied to crimes committed by someone else. Yet she acknowledged that the Cosby scandal had forced her to confront thousands of questions no child should ever have to answer. She described it as feeling dragged into a swamp I never chose. Even supporting actors, those who didn't appear throughout the full series, spoke up. Many recalled that the atmosphere on set could sometimes feel suffocating, with everyone aware of Cosby's absolute authority. He was described as a king without a crown, someone everyone tiptoed around. Looking back, several admitted that fear kept them silent, and now they carry regret, anger, disappointment, pain. These were the shared emotions of so many cast members as the truth about Bill Cosby came to light. They hadn't just lost a colleague or mentor, they had lost their pride in a project they once saw as their life's legacy. Some even felt trapped in a cruel paradox, cherishing their experiences on The Cosby Show, yet being forced to acknowledge that all of it had been overshadowed by a disgraced America's dad. And it was precisely that anger and disillusionment that pushed the story to its climax. From early silence, the cast evolved into outspoken witnesses willing to expose what went on behind the scenes, to share the darker side of their memories, and to confront head-on the legacy of Bill Cosby, a legacy both dazzling and deeply haunting. When the spotlight turns to darkness, The Cosby Show was once considered the brightest gem in the sky of American television. It didn't just bring laughter, it shattered stereotypes, portraying a successful, loving, and respectable black family. But in the end, all those values were dragged through the mud when the truth about Bill Cosby came to light. The bitter reality is that the show's legacy is no longer remembered for the warm-hearted laughter of Cliff Huxtable, but rather for the scandals of the man who played him. The consequences were devastating. Numerous networks swiftly pulled The Cosby Show from their broadcasts. The creative offspring of the entire team, Felicia Rashad, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Lisa Bonet, Tempest Bledsoe, Raven-Symoné, suddenly became indirect victims, as all their accomplishments were now overshadowed by a massive, looming darkness. Many cast members have shared how they've struggled to preserve their careers and reputations, while the public remembers them primarily as part of a now-disgraced perfect family. For the African American community, the loss was even greater. The Cosby Show had once been a milestone, a declaration that they too could be represented as successful, loving human beings, not just as worn-out television tropes. But now those once empowering memories are laced with shame, as the man who led that symbolic family turned out to have betrayed them all. Still, to view The Cosby Show solely through the lens of Cosby's wrongdoing would be unjust. The show's true legacy also belongs to the people who built it, the actors, writers, producers who worked tirelessly to create a piece of art that transformed a generation. Their brave voices finally speaking out after 40 years of silence are themselves part of that legacy, a legacy of truth. Today, when people speak of The Cosby Show, they don't just recall a groundbreaking sitcom. They also remember the painful lesson it came to represent about power, complicity, and the devastating cost of silence. Behind the laughter of years past lies a haunting shadow. And perhaps that is the show's double legacy: on one side, a cultural breakthrough. On the other, a cautionary tale about how unchecked power can corrupt absolutely. Once a symbol of the perfect family, The Cosby Show has now become a chilling mirror reflecting the darkest sides of power and silence. The revelations that emerged after 40 years prove one thing: the truth can be hidden, but it cannot be buried forever. And when it finally surfaces, it forces us to confront the way an entire industry once enabled and protected wrongdoing. What do you think about the cast finally speaking out? Leave a comment, hit like, share, and subscribe, so you won't miss the shocking stories that continue to peel back the layers behind Hollywood's glittering curtain. The truth still has many veils left to lift, and we'll be here to bring them to you.
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast.
There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.